Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and right now China just banned Apple. That's right, Apple products, but right now it's only from government employees to start, and I think more may be coming with this. Now, here's what's going on, and for the backdrop of this, I'm cribbing from Benjamin Mayo of 9 to 5 Mac's article on this, which I thought was a pretty good write-up. Now, Apple iPhone and other foreign technology devices, for the record, have been banned for use in government agencies. Now, workers are no longer allowed to use these devices for work or even bring them into office premises that are owned by the Chinese government. That is obviously a huge expansion of Beijing's longstanding policy, which has basically aimed to cut reliance on foreign technology amid foreign cybersecurity threats. If that sounds familiar, that's what I'm talking about here, and we'll get to that. Now, Apple iPhone holds a majority of share basically of the high-end smartphone sales in China as they do everywhere else. They're very, very popular everywhere. And it's in part because Huawei, which is Chinese owned and bred, has struggled to develop competitive 5G handsets, compared to basically most other makers, including Apple. Samsung would be another one. And that is in the wake of U.S. sanctions. China has been very good, for the record, and this is my personal opinion, at ripping off intellectual property and building essentially what they want to build. We've seen multiple intellectual property thefts on things like processors, silicon, all that kind of stuff. And so here we are. Now, the imposition of such a ban on the use of Apple devices has basically the potential to impact the allure of Apple's brand in China, harboring rumors of possible spying or interference, and possibly cut into customer sales as well. And I think that is part of what my analysis after this is going to be driving. It also, for the record, flies in the face of Apple's marketing of the iPhone as a privacy first platform. I have done video after video after podcast after podcast after radio show segment after radio show segment on just how Apple is not as private as they claim to be. Now, interestingly enough, critics also argue that Apple weakens the security of the iPhone in China in order to comply with local laws. I think that, for the record, is very common. I will give you a perfect example of this. Is we were doing work in China and basically purchasing an enterprise level firewall. And we asked, okay, is this firewall that we're going to be purchasing locally in China the same as the one we would get here in the United States? And the answer was, sir, it is the exact same operating system in China as it is here in the United States. And I said, that's great. How about the encryption? And literally our sales rep said, from the firewall maker, said, sir, it is the exact same operating system as the one in the United States. That's all you really need to know. So, for example, if we're turning back to Apple, iCloud data for Chinese citizens is stored on data centers inside China, geographically inside China, which obviously makes it easier for the state to intercept. They can run man-in-the-middle attacks, all that kind of stuff. But Apple says that it holds the decryption keys for that information. That said, if they hold the decryption keys, guess who they can turn the decryption keys over to? China, per a 2017 law, basically says if you've got data on foreigners or our citizens, we have access to it, no exceptions. Now, I think overarchingly, and beyond this article, China is essentially playing a tit-for-tat game here because this is exactly what the United States did with Huawei, ZTE, and some others back in 2018 with the McCain Act, if you remember that one, where basically 5 of the largest tech manufacturers in China, including Huawei, were essentially banned from being used for government services. Many other governments around the world, including England, Germany, and other Five Eyes nations, decided to go ahead with that as well. I believe Australia was on that list as well. And so essentially what you're looking at is China doing the same thing, saying, oh, well, the iPhone is an American surveillance tool, those kinds of things. And so essentially what it's going to do is poison the well for the citizenship. Go find somebody, outside of, let's say, Chinese population that has immigrated here and naturalized here. You just don't find Huawei phones because they're not really sold many places anymore, specifically because of those bans. The corporations, the Verizons, the AT&Ts of the world tend to follow suit on that. And so it just makes it harder, to get that kind of technology. Well, Apple, being such a hot product just around the globe, is going to have essentially a serious impact when their largest market, which is China, the most populous country in the world, essentially decides to start pulling this, and that allure moves. Next up would be Android, because that's a Google-owned thing, but you've got Samsung, just almost on the border of China, developing those, and so this is going to be a big push for Chinese technology. Now, longitudinally, if we're looking at this, one of the interesting things that economists, and I am not qualified to talk about this essentially long term, as I am not an economist and I do not play one on TV, has basically said that what's going to be interesting is it looks like the Chinese economy may be imploding at some point due to overextension and some other things as well that I've read. And so if they are looking to move all of this in-house and start banning, let's say, foreign sources, and for the record, they need us in trade, meaning the United States and the West, as they manufacture a ton of goods that we buy. It's been a symbiotic relationship despite the, quote unquote trade war that was tried to be ramped up under the Trump administration and other sanctions from other countries and all of that. And so we kind of need each other. It's a global economy, and we're going to see where this goes. But I think this isn't necessarily the death knell of Apple in China. They're hot, very popular products around the globe, and I think anybody that can afford an iPhone in China is still seeing it as a hot property. So if they're a government worker, maybe they're leaving the iPhone at home and bringing Huawei in. That said, every single phone is registered in China, so the government knows if you're, rocking an iPhone outside of work hours, and maybe they don't care, maybe they do. Maybe there is pressure there, and they are very good at putting that kind of pressure on their citizens. So we're going to see where this goes, but I think this is possibly the start of a serious hit to Apple's stock price as China starts to sour on Apple, because the government is driving that initially with government employees and facilities, but eventually it's going to spread, because where the Chinese government goes, the people go, whether they like it or not. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP, and please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please attempt to stay private. Thanks, everybody.